Welcome. Thank you for joining the marketing show. My name is Matthew Kilmurry, founder and CEO of apartmentgeofencing.com and hotelgeofencing.com, and I'm your host. We've got an exciting show today. It's on a range of topics from AI to top of funnel to attribution. So let's dig right in. Joining us today is Eden Chai, and Eden is the founder of Flair. His favorite quote is, "Marketing success should be based on the width of your brain, not your wallet." Welcome to the show, Eden.
Thanks so much for having me, Matthew. Really excited to talk about how you can actually achieve what I talked about in that quote and just cover the wide range of topics we have here, because the last 6 months have kind of thrown a lot of us, turned our heads around, and it's been really fascinating to watch.
I know the cookie's going away, the cookie's not going away. It's back and forth.
Google's really just one emotional roller coaster, huh?
It really is. But I'm curious, where did that quote come from?
So the HubSpot is a CRM automation. They're a massive company now that does a lot more than just CRM, but they're a company that I look up to a lot. They have the best customer service I've ever had in any company that I've worked with. And I just like the way that they approach business. So I look up to the founders a lot. And when I was just stalking them, that quote kept coming up on one of their founders. And I said, I love that so much, especially for a company like HubSpot, where money is not at all an issue. Like, Google was in talks to acquire them. They're publicly traded. Their stock has done incredibly well. But their quote is, it should be based on the success of your brain, not your wallet, which I thought was just impressive and resonates so much with just my marketing philosophies, my business philosophies. So, I nerd out and I look up to HubSpot a lot. So just naturally, that's a quote that I love.
I love that. And I love HubSpot. We use HubSpot for a ton of our stuff. I own HubSpot stock because I believe in it. And I'm really pulling for them to trounce Salesforce. Really, I am.
HubSpot stole Salesforce's lunch and keeps doing so for a while. Like, Salesforce was the top dog, and then HubSpot just came in. And at a certain point, there isn't new market share to capture. You kind of have to steal it. And that's what HubSpot did to Salesforce. And anytime someone says HubSpot versus Salesforce, I'm always commenting HubSpot. And I own their stock for that reason too. Like, I've rarely used a product I love so much. I'm like, I need to buy this company's stock. Like, that's how much I love it. And that happened to me with HubSpot, and it's like doubled since I bought it.
It has. It certainly has. And in that landscape that we're talking about are these massive tech companies, Google being one of them that have market share, have had market share for a long time, but things have been shaken up, like you were saying. AI, as we know, and large language models, they're really reshaping the top of the funnel. It's making it more of a condensed information-driven journey versus kind of the sporadic back and forth clicking through multiple things to kind of see what you're looking for. And so, for you and for your clients, how are you seeing this impact the customer journey, especially in multifamily?
Well, let me take you back to when Uber shook up the whole like taxi world, right? It was commonplace for you to call a cab, say, how much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take you to get here? Can you call me when you're downstairs? And that whole interaction just disappeared. And it was like, no, now we expect to click a button and know all of those details in less than 30 seconds. So users' expectations of what technology can do for them just dramatically changed in a very short amount of time. And all the taxi drivers were like, no one's calling me anymore. What's going on? And it's like, you have to adapt to what your users want. They don't want to pick up the phone. I mean, what you have young kids, like your kids will probably like never pick up the phone ever, right? Like that generation hates calling people. So I look at that as a very similar shift into what happened with search. Because let's say I'm looking for an apartment. I will do a few Google searches, which will result in many different tabs on my computer, a lot of different considerations. Let me figure out where this one is, where that one is. Is this an option? Where are the reviews like on this one? But now, instead of 30 different tabs, you can just ask a better question and say, instead of me trying to find an apartment that has, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath under this price, 10 minutes away from Capitol Hill, like, you can just ask a better question like that. And instead of getting 10 options to narrow down to 3, you can kind of jump to the 3 serious contenders in a lot of these situations. Maybe apartments isn't quite there yet, but in many other kinds of searches, like let's say you're looking for recipes, that is very much the case. You can just ask a better question and skip this massive part of the top of funnel and turn it from, let's say, it's not an hour anymore. It's like 5 minutes, which is pretty nuts.
Yeah, because in the renter journey in particular, this is one of the largest purchases anybody ever makes in their life, right? Their mortgage, their rent, it's a massive purchase. And so the research cycle is really long. People are like, okay, whew, here we go. Got to start looking for my new apartment community. Talk to me in 2 weeks. And they're whittling it down, and they're having to do all of this effort themselves, the comparison, people with their spreadsheets that they've shared online. And then they want, to be wowed, right? But it has to meet certain criteria first before they, take that time to really like absorb what the community has to offer. And that user experience is going to shift. It's going to shift, and it's going to shift fast. You were talking about, how user experience and expectations have changed. Well, my daughter, she doesn't make phone calls, but she FaceTimes all the time. But the funny part about it is that they don't actually look at each other. So when she's chatting with her boyfriend, FaceTime is on, but it's just the ceiling. Like the phone is sitting there, and it's like a video of the ceiling, and it's almost like a speakerphone conversation. It's the funniest thing, and that type of like shift is going to be happening fast, especially as the newer generation of renters come up in their search journey.
So the big shift that makes me a little bit scared for some people is often you take for granted the opportunity to convert somebody. But if that person glosses over and never lands on your website in the first place, that opportunity just disappeared. And you have to make sure that they picked you in the first place, right? So it's kind of like, let's say you're assuming someone's going to pick 10 different apartment complexes or communities, and I'm going to have them, they're going to land on my site at a certain point, and I'm going to wow them with like reviews, conversion tools, all this kinds of stuff. That has gone away already for a lot of different users because they're just asking a better question. And instead of looking at 10, they're looking at 3. So the top of funnel has changed. It's also gotten more important because if a user is just fast tracking through that whole process to already narrow down their choices, you have to just make sure, like the question isn't how do I convert them when I'm on my site? It's more so how do I make sure that I'm just one of the 3 choices? Right? Because those 7, let's say those 7 in the example that just got glossed over, that opportunity just disappeared because users has different expectations of technology, and they're like, you know what? Technology allows me not to do this anymore. So I'm just going to fast track. So I think that's the question versus the conversion. Like, how do you think people can make sure that they're kind of being part of the fast tracked 3 contenders?
Yeah, and we talk to our clients about this a lot. We've been really trying to educate the industry on the value of brand awareness, brand affinity for individual apartment communities in their market for that exact reason. Because when you boil things down to the features and finishes and location, now you're creating a commodity. And so I'm only being chosen because I line up with these 3 buckets. And you're not bringing in those prospects who have been exposed to your branding through, streaming TV commercials or display ads, or getting in front of them before that search starts. Because by the time somebody raises their hand and says, I'm looking for, 2-bedroom, pet friendly, this price range, they're in research mode. And so you want to get in front of those people before that, so that when they have that list of 10, they have some remembrance, some brand affinity for your property name. They're like, oh yeah, I saw that amazing, 7-second video, 15-second video in my Instagram stories a couple of weeks ago. That's so crazy. They knew that I was thinking about moving and I hadn't even started the research yet. That's how we're going to get our properties beyond just the checkboxes.
Yeah, and I think brand is the ultimate solution to not being a commodity anymore, right? Brand is how someone buys an Hermes bag versus the one at Ross, right?
Yes.
And even at the same price point, like people aren't nitpicking these 2 features. You've typed into the psychology, they've gotten in early, and they've branded, they sponsored the US Open. They did their entire brand journey to get a specific user. And by the time they made that purchasing decision, they weren't like, oh, what other $600 handbags are there? They're like, no. This is the one I'm buying. I didn't even research. When I decided I wanted this, I just went and bought it. So I want to give you an example of a fascinating user journey that of a funnel, let's say life cycle that lasted approximately like 1 hour. Ann Baum and Chris Johnson invited me on their podcast a couple weeks ago, and she mentioned a situation where her kid was watching this influencer's TikTok, and he was talking about his new candy that he rolled out. And within about 30 seconds, her kid said, I have to have this candy. We have to go to Target and buy this candy. And what I pointed out was, where was the research phase?
Right.
When did that happen? I don't remember there being a Google search here in your story. There's no Google search of like best candy for 6-year-old, you know, like that never happened. And so the demand was created and captured in under an hour. She said she just drove straight to Target and like, yeah, we went and we bought this candy. We got like the last one. It was totally sold out. The amount of demand they created this product was nuts. And I said, that's a very fascinating case study just in terms of brand awareness. How long is each stage of the funnel? I mean, that was like a circuit. It just flew. It was like a flywheel. Like he didn't even know. I mean, every kid wants candy, but before that video, there was no desire for candy, let alone this candy. So that's so many stages of the funnel were just kind of fast tracked and skipped there. Whereas there's other brands who are not doing this kind of brand marketing, who are probably wondering, why did this kid pick that candy?
Yeah.
Why are they not picking ours? Ours is cheaper, it's better, it's tastier, whatever, but the brand wasn't there to bring them in the first place, and you lost them. So that's very indicative of how I see things changing here.
I agree. And I think it's been a challenge for multifamily because of fair housing advertising. I think the industry has been kind of taught/told that they can only do bottom of funnel. You know, it's like you can't partake in the great advertising options that other industries do because you're gonna get yourself into trouble. So, you know, just be on the ILSs. Like when people we'll do the marketing when you get here, have your listing, you know, and but the problem with that is we have these beautiful buildings, these brands that we've created, but when you look at it on ILS, everyone has the same slideshow, the same text box. There's no way
Full
to
picture.
differentiate. Yeah, there's no differentiation. And so, but digital has changed everything. So, you know, you don't have to do big DMA target now where you're getting in front of, you know, homeowners and renters and everybody, right? Because unless you're a renter, you have no interest in apartment communities. I get that. But now through behavior, location, all sorts of stuff that's not it's not based on demographics or any of the restricted categories within fair housing and HUD, you can get in front of people with this top of funnel messaging. And it really is a game changer for our industry.
Yeah, that's a message that I think many people still believe. Like you said, you're still doing this education of, no, you can do top of funnel. I think before these solutions existed, you were probably like, well, I'm not going to sponsor the San Diego Padres like that software ClickUp did. Like, that's ridiculous. Like that, there's no way I'm doing that. And you might not even understand why they did that, right? But now that you can have more specific brand awareness where you can understand, okay, what are the shops that my users frequent? Is there a yoga studio that they all go to? Like, I could probably get more renters by doubling down on what my existing residents are already doing. And it's fascinating thinking about all the different new brand awareness options because it's not as spray and pray as it used to be. Like you can really get into the psychographics, the demographics, and still do it in a fair housing friendly way, which is cool, right? Like on Google, a lot of your options are limited from like a paid search standpoint. I mean, you can't do income targeting. That's a fair housing violation. There's certain keywords which, if you exclude them, can definitely be a fair housing violation. But it comes to brand awareness, because you're kind of optimizing for where the attention is. If let's say it's a yoga studio, you're saying, no, like it's people who are frequenting this yoga studio tend to like that our community is down the block, tends to attract this kind of person. And you can actually do that kind of stuff. Brand is just the ultimate solution to not being commoditized. But I think it's still just kind of a question mark of where do the dollars need to go to get to the end goal there.
We're actually looking at, so digital out of home is a new kind of exploding area. And so there's all these digital signs throughout, especially at this point, mostly urban areas, but they have inventory available to purchase in a digital way. So soon you're going to be able to say, I want, you know, there's a a digital sign at the metro across from that yoga studio, and I want my video to be shown there, And so these options are becoming more and more available. And so I'm curious for you and some of your clients, how have you, talked to them about how to adjust their strategies to meet these expectations for renters who want quicker answers, but also, influence them maybe before they're ready to submit their first lead.
A great example of this is just figuring out what content you might be unintentionally gating. Now, some people are intentionally gating their content and they're still stuck in 2010, but these days if you make my life difficult, if you make my life difficult, you kind of take yourself out of the running for being a contender, because I'm used to these flawless, smooth experiences. I open Uber, I click the button, the car comes, I get in the car, I leave a review, I leave. If you're like, oh, call us to figure out how much this will cost or what the process looks like, you're like, nope, I'm just going to use something else. Like, I don't have time for that. My expectations are a little bit too high. So the first really good exercise, which these large language models can help you with, is just analyzing your call recordings and figure out where there's a gap between things people are asking and how easily they can find those answers on all of your channels, whether it's Google Business Profile, your website, etc. One of the lowest hanging fruit is just create an FAQ section on every page and just answer the most common questions, right? No one wants to call you and ask if their 200-pound husky can live with them, right? They just want to know, and then they want to go through that funnel by themselves, right? But they want to know that you're there and that you'll easily step in to help them. I think there's too much gated content and we're making it too difficult for people to quickly answer their own questions without having to talk to you. So just doing that, like, let's call it like an information gap, and make sure you're ungating as much as possible. That would be the first place to start. Another example of this is like, our product helps stream live rents to Google Business Profile. That's an example of unintentional gating. If you're requiring people to click through your website or try to scroll through outdated FAQs, that's an extra step that doesn't need to be there. So we're helping them kind of remove that step and ungate that content and let the user go through more of the journey by themselves with as little friction as possible. So I would say, like, information gap, set up the FAQs, like, those are two great places to start, which are going to uncover so much for you. And you can change how you present your content and answer the questions in that way.
I love that. That's really great. And so make information more available. It's going to show up more in AI overview responses. And so we're up at 117 here. I have so many questions. I'm going to boil it down one more.
Okay.
Which is around attribution, right? So, we're talking top of funnel. Attribution remains a challenge. What are some of the things that you talk to clients when they come to you and say, how do I know if my marketing is working? You're saying top of funnel, you're saying branding, but how do I know? I have to give an answer somewhere.
So another big issue is all these platforms want to keep users native into their apps because that's directly tied to revenue. So if LinkedIn keeps you on LinkedIn, they're going to make more money from advertisers. Apartments.com, no one is not guilty of this. That's just their motivation. Let's figure out how to keep Matthew inside of this app and not create this perfectly trackable journey down to a website, etc. Right? Now, the bigger the purchase decision, the longer the buying cycle, and the more touch points there are. So the harder this becomes. I think we don't need to track every single little touch point. I think we just need to get better at collecting zero-party data from the users. So if you're a marketer, only change one thing at a time, right? If you're going to add, don't add too many things. Act like a scientist. I have one input and I want to see if it affects this output. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is start manually collecting zero-party data, and you can use AI to analyze it. So if you even just add an open-ended question to the bottom of your form, don't do a drop down because that biases results like crazy and you won't be able to use any of it. But if you say, hey, Matthew, how did you hear about us? And then you use AI to analyze these responses because no one has time to manually sift through these things. And then you go, oh, this new, digital banner that, you just talked about, this actually was the first place that this person heard about us. So I have some data to reinforce why that brand awareness channel actually worked. And yes, that was 6 months ago, but I'm confirming and I'm getting buy-in from the rest of my organization that we should keep doing this. I would say really just zero-party data is the solution. We're probably never going to be able to track every single digital touch point because the interests just don't align between our marketing sources. Like they don't want to help you do that really.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, some of this should be, maybe we should let this go a little bit, like let go the idea of a cost per lease or even a cost per lead across all ad sources and go back to marketing 101, which is I have a funnel. There's branding and awareness, there's findability with search, there's reputation, there's conversion, and say, okay, I know I want to be in the whole funnel, and so what's my budget spread going to be? I'm going to do 15% in awareness, most of it here at the bottom of the funnel. I'm going to put some in search and reputation and lead nurturing. And then I'm going to spread the budget out and decide what are the best options in each and start coming up with metrics to define and compare within that bucket, right? So if you're talking branding and awareness, it's organic search traffic, it's direct traffic, it's, share of voice, that kind of stuff. It's cost. You do have lead sources like ILSs, compare those to each other. What is my cost per lead on apartment list versus Zumper? Like that makes sense. But to compare a branding and awareness campaign versus an ILS versus a lead nurturing versus a reputation management software, it's apples to oranges, and we have to kind of move away from that. So that's my pitch.
I'll add one more thing to that, and then we'll wrap this up. Is oftentimes marketers tell me, oh, but leadership is not going to go for it because I don't have ROI to attribute to the brand awareness channel. You might not have data that proves ROI for that channel, but you do have data to prove that this is how renters rent.
Yes.
So show them the data of why this is the user journey, and that's what we're optimizing for. I don't need this perfect black and white, crystal clear, like dollar in, dollar out metric. I have proof over so many different data sets that this is how people interact and rent and engage. So that's what we're going to optimize for. That's the best, way to get that through, because you're not going to get that perfect ROI metric. It's just not really going to be there.
No, and you can also, speak to their desire to be efficient and save money, because at some point, there's only so many people searching the keywords that you want or landing on that page on the ILS. So you can double your spend with the platinum diamond package or increase your cost per click and get in front of this many more people, or utilize a tool for branding awareness, which is this many people at a similar or less cost. And so it's, in talking in that way will help people understand why you have that strategy, because it's cost effective, and it's getting you in front of more people, right? Building the funnel. So with that, thank you so much, Eden. I really enjoyed having you as a guest. Hey, we could go on and on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Matthew. It was a pleasure.
Thank you to everyone here on LinkedIn. I hope you join me again. Until then.